My name is Jason Yoong. I'm Ethan's operating partner, and joining me today is the legendary Dee Murthy. We will have a fireside chat followed by live Q&A on what Dee looks for in his leadership team and some other career advice from Dee. For background, Dee is the co-founder of Ghost, a private B2B platform for surplus inventory. Ghost raised a 20 million Series A, followed by a 30 million Series B. Dee is also the co-founder of 5-4 Group, the holding company for fashion brands and services, which some of you might be wearing right now. Dee is also the co-host of Group Chat, a super popular business, culture, and current events podcast. Some say the #1 podcast in the world. Tons of hot takes. I listen to it when I can't get enough of Dee, so I'd recommend you do as well. All right, everyone, the live group we have here to ask your questions. We'll take live Zoom questions at the end. So raise your Zoom virtual hand then, or feel free to write your question in the Q&A feature, and you can vote on others. So we'll use as a proxy. But let's start off. Okay, so there's three overarching topics, Dee. The first one, hiring leaders and executives. You're the co-founder of a fast-growing Series B company. What do you look for when you hire your executive team?
So a lot of things. I think obviously relative related experience in either similar concepts, adjacent industries, I think is like the first thing that I kind of like to see. But I think the bigger thing that I look for is a number of characteristics in their personality to make sure that they're the right fit of the type of company and culture we're building. So like where they are in their career is also incredibly important. So I think there are some incredibly very talented executives that have 20, 30 years experience, have taken companies public. Those folks are at a different stage in their career and maybe better fit, in my opinion, for more mature businesses. Whereas in a startup, there's a certain grit that is required, that a must do anything and everything to succeed, that I need to feel that hunger in them and saying that like I've been in these situations, but I've never gotten to the finish line. And almost like I look for failure and struggles because that means they've gotten close to the sun and just got burnt. And so I think there's a characteristic that's like still has a chip on their shoulder and they got something to prove. And I think a combination of that experience, and then lastly, I think this is actually the most important, is likability. Like you're going to spend an enormous amount of time with this person. And so if you do not like their personality, like who they are as a person, it's almost impossible to work with them. And so there's a really great story that I have when my previous business, when I was trying to sell it, I hired an investment bank, three investment banks to do a bake-off, basically select who was going to represent us in a potential exit. And there was one particular person, knew our business the best, was more than qualified, and probably would have gotten the best outcome for our business. But he said something to me when he walked out of my office after his last pitch and said, pick the guy where if you got stuck at the LaGuardia airport for 5 hours and you had to hang out with them and drink beers and talk and whatever, that you would love enjoying spending time with that person. And I basically looked at him and I said, oh man, you're not that guy. I don't want to get stuck at the airport with you. And I think people don't realize that like no matter what role you do in any job, we're all salespeople. And I think there's this weird notion that sales is a negative thing. But the
Mhm.
reality is, any leadership person has to be an incredible salesperson to their team, to cross-functional parts of the team, or to external parts of the organization. And so that's if you're a salesperson, you tend to have a likability to you that people want to be around you. So you're also a good recruiter. You know how to motivate people. So it's a combination of those things that I think that makes great leaders.
Likability. How do are there specific questions you like to ask to gauge likability? Is it a natural feel? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like your presence in the room,
Hmm.
yeah, like as annoying as it is, small talk is an incredibly important skill set in disarming people because I think in most interviewing environments, it's pretty intense and the candidate could be potentially nervous. So how do you ask questions that say, oh, obviously you can't ask about family or kids or anything like that, but like, you know, if they're from a particular town, if they follow the football team or whatever the interests are. And I think to me, it's the ability to talk to all walks of life is a big part
Hmm.
of likability because that means you know how to handle all types of personalities because we're all different people. And so if you are uh, have that mild mannered presence about you, you're probably more likely to handle all types of people. Where if you're incredibly emotional or high strung, sometimes that can rub people the wrong way.
When you are the one interviewing the candidate,
Mhm.
do you wait to see if the candidate starts the small talk, or do you go for it first? What does that look like?
Good question. I try to do it first just so that it they get more comfortable. But I think the thing that I particularly like about like I'll give you an example. I'll on my LinkedIn every day I'll get 500 messages of what I would call for the most part mediocre salespeople because they have not put the effort in to even know who I am, what we do. They just are saying this would be great for you.
Hmm.
Why? Like you don't even know how to pronounce my name. So it's like, why would we be doing business together? And I think ultimately, in a great leader, you take the effort to, like, for example, we do a monthly leadership dinner where it's just all personal stuff, like nothing to do with work.
Hmm.
Like what shows we watching, what kind of weird diets are people on, exercises, vacation plans, kids. Try to like build a bond because I think, in a weird way, like you're going to war with these people, like you gotta like them and you gotta want to be around them because you have to be able to trust them. And you don't trust people you don't like.
I agree. The other point you brought up, grit and the hunger to roll up their sleeves. How do you test that?
Really tough. References are a great way. Like you can really talk to coworkers and previous managers to get a sense of like how were they under pressure? Are they the type that, this is their job and this is their life. There are plenty of interviewer candidates where they're just like, I have this will always be a job, but I have my family and that's more important to me.
Hmm.
People say that to us all the time. But we're a startup. Like, like when I started this business, I had that conversation with my wife where I said, I'm probably going to be gone for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm setting the
Yeah.
expectations of this is the harsh reality of what I'm about to embark on.
Hmm.
So, we try to, educate people who've never worked at a startup. That's like this is a pretty high strung environment in terms of the speed which we're moving at. And if we need something done, it's just drop everything, get things done. And sometimes that does flow into the nights, or sometimes it may engulf a weekend or two. And we can't take the, you know, 10 a.m. flight to New York City because that wastes the whole day. Like, it's just like we very much are respectful of the time people need with their family and their loved ones and personal space. But when it's go time, you just have to like get it done. And I think people that worked in a lot of very large companies, not Amazon, you guys actually work pretty hard, but like a lot of other big tech companies, for example, you don't have that speed that we call it like internally velocity. Like if you don't have the velocity, then it's really hard to be in a startup environment. So like we ask questions around like how do we gauge the urgency of the person?
Hmm. How do you okay, I want to dive into this executive recruiting interview dance.
Yep.
How long is this process? How many times do you meet this person? How many candidates do you like to have in the pipeline before you make a choice? Or is it just, I know this one person really well, it's the perfect fit and go? What does that look like?
I would say there's two things. I think hiring leadership from purely like putting out a listing and getting inbound and then screening for the type of person is incredibly difficult. Uh, I think referrals, warm introductions are so much more effective. And I know a lot of people use recruiters, and we have like a love-hate relationship with recruiters. But like we've had the most success from our network and people referring people to us or people that we have worked alongside in different capacities where we're like, we want that person and we're
Mm.
gonna go get them. Like we are laser focused on getting that person. I think the interviewing process for when you have like a cold listing on your website for VP of something, and then you get inundated with resumes, it's really hard to stand out. And it's I think it's no fault of the company either. It's just it's hard. It's a very hard. How do you get above the other people that are applying for the position? So I highly recommend getting like if you can get a warm intro to someone in leadership, if you can potentially because I'll always get messaged directly, which I appreciate, but it's even me in an email or a LinkedIn DM. It's really hard to decipher is this the right person? And time is so finite. So how do we kind of get to know this person quickly and realize they're the right fit? And I would say we have nine people in our leadership. I think one person was not a referral.
How did you get that person?
Through a recruiter, I think.
And why do you have a love-hate relationship with recruiters?
You know, because I would say it depends on the structure. Like if it's a success-driven structure, it makes a lot of sense to engage because they're only asking if we place the person. There's a lot of, high-profile recruiting for firms that ask for pretty steep retainers for a leadership position, and it's gone either way. And so that's I think in a tight labor market, they have the
Mm.
leverage. We're not in a tight labor market. And so I think we have the leverage now for just being transparent. So I just wish the structures could be a little bit more flexible, given the labor environment.
Let me ask this question. So the warm referral is the most impactful. What's the best thing a warm referrer can tell you about a candidate? Is it a simple D, you got to hire this person because of XYZ or something more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of like if it's from a warm referral from someone that we have a relationship with or trust, it's like, oh, Mary said this person worked with her for 5 years at XYZ company, has nothing but good things to say about her. Like, then we're very much inclined to like, we move that person to the top and say we have to have that conversation. So I think it just gives us it guarantees them straight to the interviewing process and says yes, we should at least have a conversation with them to see if they're the right fit or not.
Okay. I ask that because it helps the audience know what to write for that referrer.
Yeah.
Because the referrer you want to make it easy on them. One quick question. Have you ever hired an executive from a cold outreach?
So um not executive, but other positions we have.
Okay.
Still pretty senior positions, but not like core leadership. We have hired a lot of people at a cold outreach.
What did they do in their cold outreach that stood out? Do you remember?
Um, so cold outreach to me is like a multiple of things. So there's obviously the email, the LinkedIn approach, but people know where our office is, people show up. People know where I'm on a Saturday morning. I'm at the same place every Saturday morning. I'm running the same location for the last 7 years. And so we also started hosting recruiting events in New York and LA. So, it's like, come on down if you want to meet us, the team, and get to know the company. So I think we make ourselves fairly available and accessible. And so I think it's a combination of learning about the business. Like if I get a cold outreach where they actually know what we're doing and not just want a job, I respond right away. Where they say something insightful about our business, or they point something out that could be an opportunity, or how they're thinking about it, then it feels like, man, they really know what we're doing, and it's like super exciting. It's like investors. We get inbounded by investors all day, but like when they say nothing insightful about what we're doing, I never respond. But if they
Mm.
actually took the time and effort to learn about our business, it just makes me feel like, oh, they really want to invest in us, or they really want to work here. Often people just say, oh, I hear about this company, sounds great. I'm gonna reach out to them. I could be great value add, but like that doesn't mean anything. Like I would love very specific feedback on why you think you'd be a good fit given your experience and how you think you could help what we are doing, and explicitly say that. Because then it feels like, oh, okay, like I worked at a B2B marketplace called X and I solved this problem for them. Is that an issue for you guys? Like, okay, wow, yeah, it is an issue for me. Would love that. But very rarely do you get that type of cold outreach.
There you go. Dee just gave you the formula, and it's an uncommon outreach that he gets, so it'll stand out.
Yeah.
Dee, I have to ask this question. Your stage, Series B, what about an executive from a big company would work at your stage? Or what do they bring, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think at our stage, a big company is always very exciting, but it's like, when were they there?
Mm.
So, like, were you at Uber 2 years ago, or were you at Uber 8 years ago? That makes a huge difference because you experienced something very different. Your experience at Uber is post maturity, post hyper growth. So, or were you there during the chaos? Like, we want people that were there at any company during the chaos, because and it could be from a big company and they were there for a long time, but like that for a startup is priceless, right? Because like all we're doing are we don't know every blind spot we're about to hit. So like people that were at these high growth, even failed startups are very interesting to us. But when they come from a large company, if so we've gone pretty in depth with some large company executives, and the things that we loved are people that worked at large companies but worked on a division that was like a small team, a little under resourced, and they built something really special. If highlighting that helps us get comfortable when they come from a very large company, like that is like, for example, we just hired someone from McKinsey. We would never typically hire someone like that, but we ended up working with them on a project. And then we found that their expertise was really in the startup stage of the consulting practice at McKinsey. So it was like super perfect fit for what we are trying to do. And so I think if you're at a large company and you're trying to go to a startup, highlighting those like early days or smaller teams. If you're in finance, yeah, I was on a team of 200 at Google, like, and you probably didn't, your workflow is very different than we were on you know, the Waymo team and we had two
Mm.
accountants. Okay, that's interesting. That means you probably did a lot more interesting things than just, basic finance stuff.
I love that you brought up this point about chaos because number one, most people on their LinkedIn or resume try to put the big, shiny, huge number.
Yeah.
But if you're going for a startup of your stage, you actually want the opposite, as you just explained. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like I'll be honest, our team, when they just screening, they get really turned off by like people that came from big companies because the feeling is that they're not willing to get their hands dirty. That's
mm.
the emotion that like people who came from big companies feel invoke at startups.
The candidate who comes from a failed startup, are you just simply looking for the lessons they learned and if they're insightful, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think, uh, any startup has the hyper, they're going fast at least, if not hyper growth. They're at least moving fast. So I think that part is super important. I also think the other part of a failed startup is you see everything that went wrong. And whether that's from the leadership standpoint, was a finance standpoint, whether it's that emotional ego standpoint. So like we have people that worked at startups that like we have someone that worked at a SoftBank startup and he always advises us all the crazy madness of what that boom bust cycle was and how they overhired in so many departments, things like that. So it's very much like, you know, myself included, like I've never taken a company public. There's so much I have to learn to get to that point. So anyone who's had any experience it can be pretty impactful and really give us a lot of um, information on how to build the business.
Um, let's go with some audience questions because Jonathan, you had your hand up first, and then Alex will go next. Jonathan, go for it.
Yeah, so I come from one of those big companies, and part of the reason that I'm looking for something else is because of all the reasons you stated. Like, I'm kind of a small fish in a big ocean.
Yeah.
I'm also not located in like a hub. I'm not in an LA, San Fran, or New York City. So I have kind of a cold start problem where I can't get close enough to get these kind of warm introductions. So what do you recommend for folks that are not as well positioned because of either location or current company to attract attention in that case?
So are you willing to relocate?
Unfortunately not. I have three small kids and my in-laws are here and they do a lot of our helping.
Yeah. So I think so just being transparent, I think for startups, it's incredibly hard to hire leadership remote because startups are already impossible, like as is. Like most startups don't make it. So to increase your odds, and I've had this discussion because I'm constantly interviewing people, incredible people, but they don't live in LA, and we are 100% in office in LA. And so I think what we've found is that like leadership in particular, it's important to be in person. And so I would say then either look for non-leadership roles in startups and I think like you may have to set your sights a little lower to get your foot in the door because there's flexibility there that they'll hire someone remote or like I don't know what city you're located in but like try to find something local so that you could be present and then I think you'll be way more impactful there and I think you'll have a bigger impact on the company and your career will be more rewarding because at the end of the day like I have two little kids as well um, and I get it it's just being in person at a startup especially one that's doing well is really fun like
I agree. I'll plus one to that.
Can I add like a small minor follow-up to a second point you made? The kind of bias against the big company. Do you find that any hires you've made like that, does that bear out to be true, or is it just kind of like, oh, they're not like us? And if so, how do
yeah
you mentioned a little bit about like, I've worked on small and scrappy things, but how do you show that you've got more of that mindset? Because I mean, personally, this is something I've been talking about for like 5 to 6 years. Is like my next step wants to be at like maybe not an early stage startup, but more of like the mid stage.
yeah I think well, first I would interview in person don't interview on Zoom I think that makes a big difference just say, I will come and meet you in person. It's like even with investor meetings, I'm like not, I'll always say, yeah, if you're ever in LA, please stop by. Or if I were in whatever city you're in, I'll stop by. I know I'm better in person than I am on Zoom, and you could see my passion and energy in person. And so I think that would be my first recommendation. Like there was someone the other day that interviewed for us for a position, and they're like down this street and they're on Zoom, and I just canceled the interview. I was like, fuck this. Like you can't even come 5 minutes. Like, and I think so. I think being in person would help. I think if it's a particular company you're interested in, start building a relationship with them so that that trust is built over time. Like if you don't need the job tomorrow and you have your eyes on a company, go meet with the founder, go meet with leadership in that company, start just popping by. Because I've hired people that I've known for the last year where I now feel comfortable with them to hire them for a senior role. So I think like there's, you know, even when you hear about like these companies getting acquired, oh, the CEO and the other CEO met on a plane 10 years ago and became friends first, and then they sold the company. It works like that for jobs too, right? Like I think you could go build a relationship with a handful of companies and just be like, hey, I have like 2 intros for you. Do you mind if I do them for you? That I think could help your business. Or here are 3 great candidates for some of the roles. Start building a rapport with the company. That way they're all like, wow, like if you become available, we would love to talk to you. And I think that's how you solve for that. It's a slow game, but I think it's the right game. If you're not urgently trying to make that transition. But pick like 3 companies that you think you'd be a good fit at and just start helping them. Because by the way, startups take all the help they can get.
Dee, I want to go back to one point you made. You look for executives with adjacent or complementary experience.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken a bet on someone with absolutely zero adjacent experience to your industry?
Yeah, I in junior positions all day.
And how about executives?
We have, I would say that they displayed a passion, interest, and understanding of our business that showed me that like it didn't matter where they came from. We've done that in engineering. We've done that in different finance positions in the company where it was just clear that they're just smart as hell, and we would be lucky if they would join our team.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say it's easier in the junior because you're just taking a bet on the person that like, you know, and even mid-level, we would take that bet. On executive, we just need like we try to make it more of a there have been times where me and my co-founder just said, no, we're hiring this person. This isn't a democracy. But most of the times it's a communal decision.
Okay. So the startups at your stage, you mentioned 2 things: velocity/speed, and then delivering results. How long do you give an executive to start delivering results for your company?
Like once they start?
Yeah, until you say, you know, maybe it's X time.
90 days.
That fast?
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is a good example of why the big company is tough, because a big company talks about 90 days onboarding, but you want to see immediate business results in 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, 90 days in startups is like a year.
Yeah.
We are a different company from January already, our business. And we will be a different company in August. And so one interesting route we have taken is start people as consultants, 1099, 90-day agreements. If we all like each other and it works out well, we'll convert you to full-time employment. And so it's a way for both sides to see if we're the right fit. We've done that with 2 people and it's worked out great. And we've hired both of them.
Okay, smart. Alex, you have a question, go for it.
Yeah, you've mentioned some of the major differences between the big companies and the smaller companies, or startups. So for someone that believes they are interested in trying a startup but has worked at big companies, what are maybe a couple more things that they need to be prepared for that they may not know having not worked at a startup before?
I think like the key like red flags for a lot of um startup founders when it comes to non-startup experienced people is like during the interviewing process, I think it's like giving, if they ask you like, hey, we're thinking about if we were to go do this, how would you think about it? It should not come off too consulting-y vibe in terms of the answer. It needs to come off like, no, this is what I would do. Even if it's completely wrong, at least it shows a bias to action that the startups just want to like go fast, break shit, make tons of mistakes, but they feel good that like, hey, they're just willing to go. Like, so I think it's like do anything to get the job done, bias towards action, showing them that like that a startup is a different lifestyle commitment than your current place. Like that is like so important because like you don't know this, but if you sign up for a startup, you're signing up for your life, right? Like this is your life for a period of time. It's not forever, it's a moment in time. But the team, because there are people on the team that are this is it, they're going for it. And it's a really interesting dynamic because like we have people on our team that are married with kids, and then we have 25-year-olds who could do nothing but work all day. And so it creates an interesting dynamic where these young people who are like, to be fair, killing it, and they look and they're like, oh, this guy, yeah, like even me, I gotta go pick up my kids, whatever, in 2 hours from school, and I gotta come back. And so like, and I see it in their face, like, the resentment, but I have to make up for it somewhere, right? So me as the co-founder, I go put my kids to sleep and come back and show them that like, I'm in the trenches with you too. Like, I have another obligation because I have children, but I'm there with you guys, like nights, weekends, earlier in the morning, be available whenever I have to be. And I think that gives, because we have a lot of leadership that actually have children, and they say, look, once I put the kids to bed, I'm available the rest of the night. And they are, and they make themselves available. And I think indicating that during an interview process also makes people feel good. They're like, oh, okay, you get it. Like, it's not forever, but right now that's the stage we're at, especially in startup land.
Anything else, Alex?
Nope, that covered a lot of it. Thank you.
Dina, what's your questions?
Well, this makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you for your time. I think the topic today was about Series B. Do you have any insight into how the dynamics change and what's important in an executive if we're looking at Series C or D? Is there a big difference that I should keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're at those points at a business, so I would say seed and Series A is like, should we even exist? Is kind of
Right.
like where that's, and our journey's been quite fast. We're only 2.5 years old, but Series A to B is like product market fit. And then B and onwards is like, it's like hyper revenue growth is usually where you see. So I think and this is why like people do hire experienced people at this stage. It's because they're looking for people that have been in those environments and know how to set up teams. They know how to build out processes and like recruit people and because it's like in most cases, most founders probably haven't scaled to this stage. So they need people around the table that have or been at least seen it. So I think there's a lot of great habits that founders need to be instilled. Like I'm a bull in a china shop. I don't follow anything. Like I just do whatever I want. But that doesn't work when you're scaling a company. Now we have nearly 100 people. So we need now people that have done that, have managed teams. Like for the next 6 hours, I have performance reviews. And so instilling things like that. So I think it's like showing that, like empathizing with, I know what stage you're at and I empathize how difficult it is, but here are things that I could bring to the table that will take you to IPO. Because that's what they want to know. Are you going to, can you take me to the promised land? Because that's what I want to hear from my leadership team is like, let's avoid the landmines, prepare me for hyper growth, tell me what we're doing, but give me honest feedback on what we're doing. So I think like those structural things is what I think excites Series B, Series C, Series D. It's like all of these people now are thinking of the path to going public, whether that happens or not, but that's what everyone is thinking about. And so people that have been around the table and had that experience, I think will resonate with them and what you could bring to the table to that.
Yeah. Like as an example, no, I'm not letting you approve a 90% discount, even though it's your company, right?
Yeah.
Controls and governance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like telling
Oh,
them,
no, you're not doing that.
yeah, I think it's like telling them like, I'm there, like I'm your, I'm here to help solve this problem for you. And I'm also here to
Right.
like be like, one of our operating principles is embrace radical candor. Like everyone should be able to give feedback to everyone and not be emotional about it, right? And that's really, really tough in life in general. But like we've done it and it's like changed our business. And so I think that things like that usually are coming from people who have leadership and who have some experience in and around, and who have been around probably incredible managers in the past that have trained them really well to take, especially in startups, it's predominantly a young team. So it's like, how do you corral them, motivate them, career development? Like half the kids in our company want career development. I don't know what that means. So we have to obviously put that in place so that they're in a good position, so they feel like, hey, there's a path at this company.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
When you're hiring an executive right now, are you looking at this executive and seeing if this person can be here until IPO and beyond? Or is it more like you have the skills to get us to X stage, and that's what I need you for right now? How do you think about that?
It's the latter. I look at it for what do I need right now, and can they evolve into the person? Like in the way that like startups move so fast, there's like your 0 to 1 people who will do basically anything and will their way into, that product market fit phase. And some of those people will continue on. Some of those people will not. And so at this next stage, the goal would be great to have them till the end, but we are thinking about what can you solve for us right now? Because I think you're not in a stage when, even in this like BC kind of range, you can't hire just for the future yet. Like that's a pretty big company to do that. And by the way, that's a boring role too. Like you're not going to be getting your hands dirty, and the fun of startup is like getting in it, like being in the weeds, right? Like that to me is what people are looking for. Like that literal line, like I want to be in the weeds, not like I want to manage a team and I want to work on strategy. That's like a mega red flag for a founder. Like I want to manage a team. No, I want to get in the weeds. I want to be in the trenches with the other team members, right? Because like startups just don't have, they're not going to have the cash they had 5 years ago. It's just not happening again for foreseeable future, or 3 years ago. So everyone needs that kind of bias to action to like get in the weeds. So I think we have to think about the short term, and then the hope is that everyone evolves along with the business and kind of levels up. And we're very transparent, like during our performance reviews, you need to level up in these 3 things, to continue the trajectory you have at this company.
That makes sense. I'm gonna flex now to general career advice from Dee. What's a common career advice you think is complete BS?
What is complete BS? Networking.
Say
Like,
more.
I think networking is not like going to an event and just hanging out. I don't think is a great way to build relationships with people. Relationships are built one-on-one. And if you really want to build a relationship with a company, a person, tried like, like the beautiful thing about the internet, it's so easy to find out about anyone, about anything. And if you did something, even like a card to an executive that you want to have a relationship with, like you want to meet, and you said, hey, like there was someone that sent something for my kid who wanted my attention. I mean, you send something for my kid, I'm done. Like, what do you need? Like, I'll do anything. It's literally, I was like, come in the office right now. And all he did was buy like a $10 toy for my kid. So to me, when they say networking, like showing up at events and passing out a business card or whatever, QR code, whatever people do now, I don't think that's the environment where you're going to actually build a relationship with people. Like, to me, those are like sales environments. I think the idea that if you don't need to know 1,000 people, you need to know the 10 right people. And if you're more targeted in getting to know them and build a relationship and then saying, hey, can I help you with anything? Or here are 3 things I think I could help you with. That makes it feel, I don't know, it makes me like feel more connected to that person. And so I think when you're building a career, like build relationships, not just go meet a ton of people. Like, having 5,000 LinkedIn connections with people you don't know doesn't mean anything.
I agree. The adding value first is the important part. The difference is most people don't have a good definition of what value is.
Honestly, just being really nice is a pretty good value. Like,
Interesting.
like I think you can even like if something good happens in their career, like complimenting them, like or messaging them when something positive happens with their business, just showing support is like is pretty simple. Like people will, it's like how like on social media, if you post like pictures of your kid, everyone thinks you're a good dad.
Yeah.
People like, you're such a good dad. I was like, one, I am, but how do you know that? Because I post pictures of my kid. So like public support of another person in your industry makes them feel like you care. Like I'll always comment and like and people in my industry that I don't even know that well, but when I see them, they're like, dude, thank you so much for being so supportive all the time. It's so simple. It's like the little things, congratulations, a congratulations card. It's like you can get a long way by just being like a kind person. Like I think it's very underestimated. I think everyone's trying to be like too tactical with the strategy, and it's even simpler than that.
That's a good point, especially with startup founders, because it really is a roller coaster. So
And
that
you're highly
message,
emotional. Startup founders, like my emotion on a given day is like I'm like crying to like I think I'm king of the world. And that's like between 6 a.m. and 9
D, you need your own reality show.
a.m. It couldn't be on regular television.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think people get stuck in their careers?
I think you have to be ultimately like pretty self-motivated. And I think it cannot be about just money. Because I have a friend who just finished residency and got an incredible offer at Kaiser. And in medicine, that's like the golden handcuff because they pay you really well. And basically you cannot leave. If you leave, you can't start a private practice for so many years. So like you're screwed. So if you take the job, you're basically setting up for this life at Kaiser. It's really hard to ever walk away. I think like most people are, you know, if money is the most important thing, like startup is a really scary place. Just being honest, like it is not, no matter how much money that company has raised, it is not ultimately the most stable place to be. And so if you get complacent, it's because you may have responsibilities that you have to tend to, like you have a family, you have bills to pay. And so taking that risk is almost impossible. Like that's like basically like my dad. My dad would never have taken a career risk given that he had children and bills to pay, immigrant, all those types of things. So,
Mm.
but he was never complacent because he was very motivated and very passionate about what he did. So I do think, like, as corny as that sound, is like you have to have passion for what you do. If you don't, whether it's in a big company or a startup, like you got to be excited about work because life's too short to just spin the wheel, spin the hamster wheel, because there are other places where you could probably make similar compensation and be happier. And I
Yes.
think, you know, like time goes by fast, and next thing you know it, you're, you know, 75 years old and you're like, damn, I didn't get to do what I wanted with my life. And it doesn't mean you have to go to a startup, but like you could do something you enjoy.
You know the whole thing with mercenary versus missionary at startups?
Yeah.
Do you believe in that, or do you think, I mean, there are a lot of people who do startups and just for the money because they see a huge paycheck.
Yeah,
What do
that's
you
fine.
think? Hmm.
I think that's fine. Like I think like if you want to optimize for money, you should go to a really hot startup and be an employee. Way better than being a founder. Founder is miserable.
What
Like
what stage startup?
Series A, Series B, clearly revenue growth, well financed, seasoned founder, then it's like then it's worth going because like
Hmm.
you could potentially make good money if there's an exit.
Yeah.
If you want to take high risk, you go to a seed stage startup. But you know,
Yeah.
those are just, you can make a lot of money, but it's the risk is insane.
Insane. As someone who did it, insane.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to ask this question because it came from the chat. Family or sports team? Which culture do you like?
Team. So we had this right when we started the company. Our first all hands, it was four of us.
Great.
And I said, we are not a family, we are a team. Families are dysfunctional, my family included. And so I believe that teams are optimizing to win, and players are asked to step up. And you could be a role player, you could be the star player, you could be a bench player, but you participate in the success of that team. And I think it's incredibly important to send that message to your company because my last company was a family. And it was really tough to move on from people,
Yeah.
to give people feedback. I can't fire my brother, and literally like my brother worked with me, but I'm saying even people that I considered my brother, right? Like you can't do it. It's like, oh, you're my brother, when we were drunk at a bar one day and I was just like, now I have to fire him. It doesn't work like that. It's impossible. So I think, you know, I've taken this approach of like we have to delineate family and team is what we're building today. Teams win championships, teams are dynasties. Families are great and they're loving and they're fun, and but they're dysfunctional, and then their goal is ultimately not to win, it's just more to be together, whereas a team's only goal is to win.
I agree. Jonathan, your question.
So as someone with founder aspirations, I have kind of a two-part question. The first is, how do you know when you're ready to start something? Like, or do you ever know, or is it just you can't not do it? And then the second part is, if you do, and currently I work for a Fortune 50 company, so it's about as far away as I can get from a startup. Do I have to take steps before I get there? Or is it just be in a position to where you can't not do it?
Yeah, there's like there's an emotional readiness and there's like a physical readiness. The physical readiness is like financially, can you take the risk to go do it? Like, you know, you said you have 3 children, so like can you take that leap? You have to, that's for you to, you know, decide, and what sacrifices you as a family are going to make. The emotional part of it is it's really fucking hard. And it's like everything is hard. Like raising money is hard. You know, hiring is hard, getting your first customer is hard. And so from a pure emotional side, how much tolerance do you have for pain? And how do you react to that pain? That's like, to me, it's why you know, I started this business at 41 years old. I'm 43 now. And one of the reasons why I did it was I said, I felt washed. I had no confidence. 20 years of running my own business, I had zero confidence when I started this business. And there's two things. One, an investor gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. The other was I read an article that the average venture-backed founder was 43 years old. And I was like, oh shit, I'm young. I'm only 41. I could do this. But like, and I see why, because like there's an emotional toughness that, call it, adults have that young people don't have. And I think the temperament and how you react is so different at 43 than I was at 24. 24, 25-year-old D, when my company was on fire, I was an asshole. I was so emotional about everything. And I was like cocky. I felt like I knew everything. Now I don't, I I don't have a bone of any of those things in me. So like I'm way more prepared for all the ups and downs of a startup. So I think you have to be physically ready. And that to me is really just the financial portion of it. And then like having that conversation with your family, like, because it affects everyone. Like, you know, I had to have a serious conversation with my wife when I did this, because it was a financial impact to, you know, what we're doing. And it was an emotional impact. I'm not going to be here. And are you cool with that? And so the good news is you can talk through those things and find a solution if this is the right path for you or not.
All right. Anyone? We're coming up close. Okay, Dina, go for it.
So Dee, I heard you loud and clear about your opinion of LinkedIn and people and their random cold pitches for which you have no patience, but you know us now.
Yeah.
So we're not cold. Are we able to connect with you, especially if we can help you with something that you referenced?
Yes, of course.
All right, look for something from me then. Thank you.
D. Oh, so these were some audience pre-submitted questions. Someone asked, how much runway is expected in a Series B company?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. What's a challenge you encountered while scaling a company? How did you overcome it?
I mean, I would say it's like everything. You're scaling revenue, which is always hard, and you have to do it efficiently, especially in this market. And then hiring is really difficult, really hard. And there's so many dynamics at play now with potentially remote workers versus in-office workers, and salary expectations, especially coming off the highs of what happened in the last 2 years. So there's like a disconnect between like on compensation with a lot of the conversations we have. But so it's just people and just like getting customers in, like are the two most difficult things.
That makes sense. It's the two most important things. What is the hardest role for you to hire for?
I don't think there's an easy role to hire.
Hmm.
So I think all roles are difficult. Like leadership obviously is just, it just takes time. It's more, we just want to get to know the person a little bit. We don't want to do anything too fast. But I would say that all these roles, we have many interviews for every role, because I think every person is very important.
Okay. If you have a question for D, now's your chance to raise your hand. D, I'm going to hit you with this last question from me. You look back at your career. Is there a pivotal moment that you are fond of or that you remember a lot that changed who you are as a person?
Yeah, basically, like failing in my last business. or what I viewed as a failure. That
How did
was
it change you?
it made me restart and not act like I know what I'm doing. Because it made me just be way more open-minded and be like, shit, I'm gonna listen now. I need to stop talking. And it changed the trajectory of this business. I mean, the pace at which we are growing now is just accredited to just having a different mindset on how to approach things.
Did you realize that yourself, or did you have help from somewhere else?
Yeah, it was a combination of a friend of mine who's an investor basically told me unlearn everything you've ever learned, and I think you'll have a better approach to this new business. And which is really hard because the business ghost is very adjacent to everything I've ever, only thing I know. You know, it's in the retail space. And so when he said that to me, I was like, whoa, that was a crazy statement. But I did that, and that I had such a different appreciation for how powerful that was.
I love that. Whenever someone says the word unlearn, I always think of the person you introduced me to, In Q, the
Yeah,
slam poet, because he
yeah,
has that poem about to learn, you have to unlearn, and
yeah,
then he does this cool thing that I can't do. So I always remember
yeah.
that. All right, Dee, we're at the hour. You're busy. You're running a company. Any last call to action you have for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you took the time to listen to anyone talk about this is, I think, a really great step in like um kind of making progress in where you want to go next. I would just say go have an open mind, go build relationships. I think it's so powerful to go spend time with people you want to work with, like in person. Like have, there's it could change the trajectory of your life. And you may even give you appreciation of where you're currently at too. And be like, wow, this is a great job. I don't want that life.
I love that. If you want more of Dee, listen
Yeah.
to him on group chat. I think you almost come out with an episode every week.
Yeah, once or twice a week. Yeah.
And what's the best platform for people to connect with you? LinkedIn, Twitter, something else?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dee.
Thank you
Thanks for
guys.
the
Great meeting
knowledge.
everyone.